start the sleeve, which I want to show you how to do. But before, I just want to go over how to work the chart. So this is the chart. I've printed it out here. And the way we work it is that you work those 2 stitches at the beginning, then you repeat the red until almost at the middle marker, where then you work this little section, well, this whole section, because you start increasing with the yarn overs in the middle. And then you go to the other side, repeat this until the last 2 stitches where you do these 2. So as you can see in the middle, here are the increases, and the increases are done with the yarn overs in there. So when this is all stretched out right now, it hasn't been blocked, obviously, so it's quite more compact. But once it's straight out, let me show you my swatch. I mean, it looks so pretty like this. So I'm really excited for this one. Okay, and so after you've finished until where the pattern says where you need to start the sleeve, it's going to look something like this. And then we're going to start the sleeve. And the way you do that is we're going to cut our yarn here, leave a little bit for a tail always, and then we're going to weave that in later. And then we're going to start making our sleeve. Let me get you closer. On your right hand needle, the one that is not attached to the tail, so this is where my tail is, this is my left hand needle. I'm going to go to my right hand needle. I'm going to do a long tail cast on just because it's the easiest, but you can do whichever cast on you feel like doing. So this is still attached to my work, okay? I'm not using a new needle. Oopsie. And you're going to cast on the sleeve cuff. Now, the pattern says a certain amount of stitches. Feel free to modify this if you want the cuff to be a little bit thicker or a little bit narrower. Okay, and I'm going to make my knot there. And now that I've got casted on my stitches, I'm going to go back to my work, move my stitches over, pick up my live tail from when I cast it on, and continue working on my chart. Now I am on row 18 now, which is 1, 2 knits and then repeat my chart. So then I do that again over here. 1, 2, and then I repeat my chart. Okay, now I'm not going to do the whole thing on camera because it's not necessary, but I just want to show you how this is going to be very messy because of the tails. Just make sure you keep them nice and taut, and then at the end you're going to be able to weave these tails in and it's not going to be a problem. So you're going to work the whole row, and then at the end you're going to work the second cuff. Okay, so I'll show you in a minute how it's done. Alright, so I have finished my row now, and now I'm going to cast on stitches for my sleeve, the same amount as I did on the other side. So I did 15 on my other cuff, so on this one I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to use a 2 needle cast on, although you can use the wraparound cast on, so you can do, if you just twist this and then push it. That's also a good effective method, but I don't think it's as neat as the 2 needle cast on, so I'm just going to do 2 needles. So for that I'm going to insert my hook, pull through, and then pop it in. So insert, pull, and then kind of twist. So you see it comes out, and then I twist my needles so that they're facing the same way, and I pop my stitch in. All right, so now that I've casted on my cuff, I'm going to work back on the wrong side. So on the way back, all the cuffs are going to be worked in garter stitch, both cuffs. So that means that I'm going to knit every stitch, and then when I am back on my chart on the body of the jumper, I'm going to purl. Okay, so you have to remember the chart only shows you the right side of your knit. The wrong side is always purl. But the cuffs are going to be different, they're going to be knit. So in order to avoid confusion, I'm going to place a marker right at the end of the cuff. Okay, so that is my cuff. I'm going to place my marker there. And then I'm going to work my wrong side row, which is all knit. All right, and there you go. I have my cuff at the beginning and the other cuff on the other side, and these are going to be worked in garter stitch only, remember? So knit on the right side, knit on the wrong side, and obviously follow the chart on the middle of the body. All right, so here I have worked the whole back, and on my size I finished at a row 10 of the first chart. Depending on your size, you might finish at row 10 or row 20, but this is what it should look like. So here are the cuffs at the side, one and the other one over here, you can see. And in the middle I have marked my middle stitch, so this is the one that I've had marked the whole way through. And I've also counted 5 stitches to the right and 5 stitches to the left from that, and placed a standing marker there. So these 11 stitches I'm going to be binding off on the way. All right, so I'm going to work my next row. So this is going to be from the second chart, from the front charts. So I'm going to start from this end. Again, continue with garter stitch, and then when I get to here, I'll show you how I bind off, okay? All right, I have reached my standing marker. There it is, if you can see it. So I'm going to remove it now, and I'm going to start binding off these stitches. So I'm going to knit 1, then knit 2, and then pass the stitch over the first one. Knit the next one and pass it over. And I'm going to do this all the way until my next standing marker. So that's going to be 11 stitches bound off, and I can take my middle markers, knit middle stitch, my last stitch. So I'm gonna bind this one off, and this one is the stitch that had the marker before, right? So I'm gonna knit one more and then bind that off, and then now I am ready for my left chart. Again, my left chart, you start at the row that corresponds to your size, okay? So I'm going to continue following my left chart, and when I get to the end, we're going to go back and work together. All right, so I finished binding off here in the middle. Now I'm only going to work on the left side now, so if you want to put the right side on a stitch holder or on a scrap piece of yarn, if you don't want it to get in your way, then go ahead and do that now. I'm just going to leave them on my cable because I'm basically too lazy to deal with that, but you feel free to do whatever you want, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to cast on a bit for the neckline. So we're going to work the neckline separately, and then when we have enough stitches and enough rows on that neckline, we're going to join the left side onto that neckline, okay? But before we do that, we need to do a provisional cast on so that later we can pick up the stitches from that neckline and work the right side as well. Okay, so today we're going to learn how to do the provisional cast on and how to join the left side onto those rows that we've worked on the neckline, okay? So you can do whichever provisional cast on that you want, but I'm going to show you how to do this one that I found today that I think is quite easy and helpful. So I'm going to leave a tail on my working yarn. I'm going to move this away. Now you can use, so I'm using a cake of my yarn, so you can pull out the yarn from the inside to do this, this bit of the neckline, or you can simply pick up a new ball of yarn, which is what I'm doing, okay? So you're going to leave a little bit of a tail on your working yarn. You don't need to worry so much about the other provisional cast on yarn. So you need a scrap piece of yarn. Okay. And you're going to make a little knot on them, just like this. Something that is easy to undo later, okay, if you have to. And then we're going to put them together like this. Okay, so once you have them like this, you're going to have your working yarn at the bottom and your scrap yarn at the top. And I'm going to pick up my right hand needle from my work. So see, it's still attached to my work, but that's all right because I can do it like this. If you're using a new needle, or if you want to put your stitches on a stitch holder, do that now, okay? So I'm going to hold on to the yarn over here like this, and I'm going to pass in between the yarns under my working yarn, and then over both, under, and then through. Okay, so that gives me 2 stitches now. I'm going to do that again and show you, okay? So I'm going to go through between both under my working yarn, then over both, all the way around, and in between them. Okay, there you go. And do that again. Under, over both, under this one, and there you go. Then again, under, over both, in between, and there you go. Under, over both, and under, and in between. Okay. Again, if you feel like this is too complicated, feel free to use whichever provisional cast on you feel like using if you know a different technique. Okay, there's quite a few different techniques. There's one you can do with a crochet hook that is actually quite easy as well. Okay, now this is the neckline, so feel free to cast on as many stitches as you want, and once we are there, I'll show you what to do. Okay, all right, somehow I ended up with 17 stitches. I'm just gonna get rid of some until I have the right amount. So there you go, I have 15 stitches. Okay, and I'm gonna use my other needle. Again, these are still the needles that I'm attached to my work, which is fine. If you want to use a different needle because this is too faffy for you, then feel free to do that, okay? Now, holding on to that scrap piece of yarn, don't let go of it. You're simply just going to knit across. Okay. And then I turn and I knit again. And right now it's still all a bit of a mess with the yarn, but it will soon make more sense, okay? Now I'm going to slip the first stitch with the yarn in front and knit. Alright, I have now enough rows, and as you can see, so these are the stitches I bound off. It covers about half of those stitches. Okay, so from my middle marker all the way to the end, this kind of covers it. It's a little bit bigger when you stretch it out, but that's okay. That doesn't really matter. Okay, so this is how long you want this section to be. Now that you have it long enough, you can feel free to cut the yarn and leave enough of a tail so you can sew it on later, okay? And there you go. All right, so the stitches are on your working needle, right? But you're gonna use it for working on the garment. So what we're gonna do is move them over to another needle or a scrap piece of yarn if you want, up to you. After we have cut the yarn on it, and we're just gonna leave them aside for a minute so that we can work on our garment for the next row. Oopsie. There you go. So these, I just put them in a double pointed needle, and I'm just gonna leave them on the side, okay? And now I'm gonna work on my garment. Lift it up a little bit more. There you go. And I'm going to work the wrong side row, which is a purl row, all the way until the end of my row where the bound of stitches are. So at the edge, I always slip the first stitch with my yarn in front before knitting. All right, I have now finished the wrong side all the way to my bound of stitches. So I'm going to place a marker there. And then I'm going to pick up my work from my neckline. And starting on the side where the tail is, don't use that tail, use your live yarn, of course. You're going to simply knit across. Now make sure that that first stitch is as tight enough so that your stitches are nice and neat. So this is a good thing about using another needle to hold on to your stitches, is that you can simply work off that needle to pass them on to your actually working needle. And that's it. Now from now on, every time you work the left side, you're going to start at the neckline, then work your chart, and then head to the cuff. And you do that every single time. And then once your left side is finished, we're going to pick up the stitches from here, which as you can see is basically having like a scrap piece of yarn right there. So we're going to pick these stitches up, work the neckline on the other side, and then join it to your working, to the garment. All right, so I'll see you when I finish my left side so that we can join the neckline and do the right side. All right, so I just wanted to show it to you one more time. So this is what it looks like after I've worked the next row of the chart. And this is where my neckline is. And the bound of stitches are over here. So again, I'm just going to work to the end of the neckline and then turn around. And at the beginning, we increased in the middle, right? We went increasing over here. Now for the front, we are going to start decreasing, but we're going to decrease from the sleeve side. So the triangle is going to stay straight on this side, and over here we're going to start decreasing towards the hips. All right, so hopefully this gives you a better idea of how the construction works. All right, so this is what the first front panel looks like. So this is the sleeve, and this is going to be sewn on, and this side is going to be sewn as well. And this is the bottom over here, and then this is the neckline. Now again, because it hasn't been blocked, this looks a lot smaller than it will be. It will actually extend quite a lot once it is blocked. So don't worry if you're here and you're thinking it's too small. All right. Same with the length of the arm. Like right now, it's really, really short, but this will stretch a lot when it's blocked. Okay. Now to do the other side. To do the other side, the first thing we're going to do is pick up the stitches on the neckline, and once those are picked up, we're going to work the neckline a little bit so that we can get to this side of those bound of stitches at the back, and then we're going to join and work all along our live stitches. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick up these stitches, and then we're going to do the first row together. All right, so I have put those stitches into my needles. Now this is really cool because once I have my stitches in, I just remove my scrap piece of yarn, and then I am ready to go. Some of these stitches are twisted, as you can see. So just make sure that you work with them the right way. Okay. So pick up your live yarn and you're going to knit. So this one's twisted, as you can see, the closer leg is at the back. So we're going to untwist them as you work on them. Okay, this one's twisted too, so if you want to untwist it first, that's a good idea. Okay. Again, this one's twisted too, so you gotta untwist it and then work up. All right. Okay, there you go. And now I'm going to work my neckline until it is as long as the bound of stitches here, or twice as long as what I've worked before. It doesn't have to be an exact number, but just so that this bit is in the middle of my neckline, I'm gonna work that many rows. All right. All right, so at this point I have enough of a neckline to cover the stitches and a little bit more. I want it to be nice and loose so that it kind of folds at the back of my neck. And then I'm going to start joining these two together. So on the next wrong side row, which is what I have now, I'm just going to work them together. Let me show you. Now, if at this point you still have the stitches from the other side on a stitch holder, make sure to put them on so that you can start working on the wrong side of this row. So I'm going to continue as I was doing on my neckline and slip one with my yarn in front, then knit to the end of my neckline. Okay, then I'm going to place a marker there to separate the neckline from the body, and I'm going to purl the rest of the row. All right, so there it is. I have joined the neckline all the way to the sleeve. And for the next few rows, I'm going to be working the sleeve as well until it's time to bind these off on the other side. Now here, as you can see, it kind of separates a little bit, but once you work a few rows and this gets sewn on, this little separation will be taken care of. Just be aware that, like on the other side, you will eventually have to bind off the sleeve. So as you follow on the chart, just keep a note on which row you're going to be binding these off so that you don't go over and then you have to redo it. All right. Okay, I'll see you back here when it's time to block and then sew together. All right, so I'm in my bedroom because this doesn't fit on my desk. This is the finished garment now. When I blocked it like this. Let me show you the picture. Now it looks very messy because this is the only place where I can have it blocked because it was quite wide. So as you can see, all the pieces are laid out, and that is so that the lace stretches out as much as possible. Now, when I blocked this, I used a spray block, and I should have done a wet block because as you can see, the lace, I feel like it could be a little bit more open, and next time I have more space, I will try to block it better, like give it a nice bath and then block it properly so that the lace expands a little bit more. But so far I really like the way it is. Now this here is where I've sewn the sides together. So I started from the bottom all the way to the top and over the sleeve over here, and I used mattress stitch to join it. So there's the edging. Now the thing about mattress stitch is that since they are the same amount of stitch of rows on both sides, then you can match each stitch together, and you can use mattress stitch, and it's really quite neat. Yeah, I really like this seam. And then at the back over here, I have sewn those rows from the neckline that we made with the bound of stitches at the back. And I just I mean, you can't really tell that much, but I just sewn it on like however, it looked fine. There's no special technique for that. And that's it. So this is the way it looks. It is so comfy, really nice to wear, and I love it. I hope you've enjoyed making it. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions. You have all of my information on the pattern. You have my email and my website, and I am here to help. Happy making, everyone!